High in the jagged peaks of the Ötztal Alps, where icy winds scream like ghosts through the stone valleys, a body lay entombed for over 5,000 years. When hikers stumbled upon it in 1991, they had no idea they had unearthed one of the most haunting cold cases in human history. The world would come to know him as Ötzi the Iceman. His skin was like ancient parchment, his gear a time capsule from the Copper Age, but most striking of all was the arrowhead embedded in his shoulder. For decades, scientists and storytellers alike built a single narrative. Ötzi was hunted, ambushed, and shot in the back by his enemies, a tragic tale of prehistoric murder. Yet, beneath the layers of ice and centuries of speculation, the truth was more elusive. Now, microscopic evidence is overturning everything we thought we knew. Could the famous arrow wound be a red herring? Could Ötzi's death have been caused not by violence, but by something far stranger, disease, ritual, or even environmental catastrophe? The snow is melting, and with it, the old theories are slipping away. Step back to 3300 BCE, when Europe was a patchwork of emerging cultures and fragile alliances. The Alps were both a barrier and a bridge, a treacherous crossing for traders, warriors, and wandering herders. Glaciers glimmered like jagged teeth, while dense forests cloaked the valleys below. This was a land of constant tension, where survival depended on mastery of stone, wood, and fire. Ötzi himself belonged to a people perched at the dawn of metallurgy. His copper axe, now darkened with age, was a symbol of both power and progress. Villages clung to mountainsides, their thatched roofs barely visible through the mist, while herds grazed on precarious slopes. But life here was brutal. Harsh winters could starve a community. Raiding parties from rival tribes turned neighbors into enemies. In this volatile world, every journey carried danger. The alpine passes where Ötzi was found were not just trade routes, they were arteries of life and death. Against this backdrop, one man's final hours would echo for millennia, preserved in ice. Yet the landscape that froze him in time also hid the real story, waiting for modern science to uncover it. September 1991. Two hikers, Helmo and Erika Simon, scramble across a melting glacier when Erika gasps. Half buried in ice lies what appears to be a corpse. At first, authorities assume it's a lost mountaineer, but when archaeologists arrive, they realize they are staring into the face of prehistory. His skin is brown and leathery, his clothes woven from grass and animal hide, his gear astonishingly well preserved. Then comes the discovery that electrifies the scientific world, an arrowhead lodged deep in the Iceman's left shoulder. It looks like the smoking gun of a 5,300-year-old murder. Beside him, a quiver of arrows and a finely crafted copper axe hint at both skill and status. The scene suggests a violent ambush. Perhaps Ötzi was a tribal leader, struck down by rivals and left to die in the snow. The media runs wild. Headlines declare, "World's oldest murder solved." Crowds flock to see the mummy on display. But even in these first moments, some archaeologists hesitate. There are no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle. Could this be a staged death or even a ritual? The ice has preserved not just a body, but a puzzle of bone, blood, and silence. As decades pass, technology sharpens like a blade, allowing scientists to probe Ötzi's remains with unprecedented precision. In a sterile lab, his body lies under cold, blue light while instruments hum softly. Teams of specialists gather, forensic pathologists, geneticists, climatologists, and chemists, all united by a single question. What really happened on that mountain? Using high-resolution CT scans, researchers traced the arrow's trajectory. Surprisingly, the shaft never fully penetrated vital organs. The wound alone, they conclude, might not have been fatal. DNA sequencing of blood residues reveals traces of multiple individuals on Ötzi's tools and cloak, suggesting he had companions, or even enemies, close at hand before his death. Meanwhile, pollen analysis uncovers that his stomach was filled with ibex meat and einkorn wheat, proving he had eaten only hours before dying. Isotope studies of his teeth and bones map his movements across valleys and glaciers, tracing a life spent traveling between lowlands and high passes. Then comes the most startling discovery. Microscopic tissue samples reveal signs of severe illness, including Lyme disease, hardened arteries, and possible internal infection. The evidence, whispers of a slow, creeping killer, one far older than the arrow's story. The turning point comes when a young forensic specialist, Dr. Alina Weiss, examines a sliver of tissue from Ötzi's wound under an electron microscope. What she sees defies decades of certainty. The tissue surrounding the arrow injury shows no immediate inflammatory response. In other words, Ötzi was already dead or dying before the arrow struck. The supposed murder weapon was not the cause of death, but perhaps a post-mortem act. At a dramatic conference in Bolzano, rival scientists clash beneath the glare of camera flashes. The traditionalists cling to the ambush theory, a warrior fleeing enemies, struck down in a mountain pass. But Weiss's team presents their findings, slides lit like courtroom evidence, showing microscopic traces of ancient bacteria consistent with septicemia, a blood infection likely triggered by an untreated wound on his hand, or even by an intestinal parasite discovered in his gut. Gasps ripple through the auditorium. Could Ötzi have succumbed to illness, exhaustion, and cold, only to be pierced by an arrow later, perhaps in a burial ritual or scavenging attack? The room erupts in debate. Centuries of narrative collapse in an instant. The Iceman, once thought a victim of violent betrayal, now appears to have been undone by his own fragile biology. The revelation sends shockwaves through archaeology and beyond. Ötzi's death is no longer a tale of prehistoric warfare, but a window into the hidden epidemics of the ancient world. His preserved body becomes a time capsule of pathogens, Yersinia enterocolitica, ancient strains of Lyme disease bacteria, and even hints of genetic markers tied to modern heart disease. Medical researchers seize the opportunity. By comparing Ötzi's microbes to their modern descendants, they trace how diseases evolved alongside humanity, offering insights into contemporary pandemics and antibiotic resistance. Meanwhile, anthropologists reconsider the social dynamics of Copper Age Europe. If Ötzi wasn't killed in battle, perhaps the arrow was part of a funerary rite, an offering to the spirits of the glacier, or a symbolic release of the soul. The Alps themselves emerge as a character in this unfolding drama. Climate change, accelerating the melting of ancient ice, threatens to destroy similar finds before they are discovered. Governments and scientists scramble to develop rapid response teams to preserve what remains of our frozen past. Ötzi's mystery reminds us our greatest enemies are not always other humans, but time, disease, and the relentless forces of nature. Today, Ötzi rests in a climate-controlled chamber in Bolzano, his silent form watched by millions of curious visitors each year. Scientists continue to study him, peeling back layers of truth like the rings of an ancient tree. Yet, for every answer, new questions emerge. Was the arrow a symbolic gesture of farewell, or a scavenger's theft gone wrong? Did Ötzi wander alone into the mountains, delirious with fever, or was he carried there by companions following a sacred ritual of ice and death? Outside, the glaciers that once preserved his body retreat further each summer. As they melt, they release not only artifacts, but forgotten stories, some of them perhaps as shocking as Ötzi's. It is a reminder that history is fragile, suspended between revelation and oblivion. In the fading light of the Alps, the wind still howls through the peaks, carrying with it the ghostly whisper of a man who lived and died 5,000 years ago. His voice is faint but enduring, a riddle carved in ice, urging us to look deeper, to question harder, and to remember that even the coldest truths eventually thaw.